First of all, Monica, what do you expect to hear out of the president?
Well, I expect to hear more of the same, which is total intransigence. He will not compromise. He will not negotiate. It's my way or the highway. This is the way he has been, Neil, for the last 5 years. Why anybody on Capitol Hill, or frankly anybody in America, expects him now to suddenly change and suddenly
But he
want
has
to
negotiated extensions in the health care law. It's not as if he would be caving to offer yet another one, right?
Well, look, you know, the argument on defunding Obamacare, what Obama himself has done has been essentially to defund his own law through the delays, through the waivers, through the extensions. But when Republicans propose even tinkering at the margins with this law, he says, nope, that's it. I'm not going to move. This is who he is. This is not a big mystery here as to who this president is. They keep, you know, the Republicans continue in their earnestness and genuineness, continue to go in good faith to this president, wanting to negotiate on spending, on the debt ceiling, on Obamacare. And every single time for years now, this president has said no, no, no.
But they must be nervous. Republicans must be nervous because they keep coming back. All right, we won't stop it. We'll delay this provision. Well, okay, if you won't delay the law, maybe the employee mandate. They'll get up and move beyond that and say, how about the exemption for Congress and the president? They seem to be the ones coughing up. I'm wondering if they're getting nervous. The president senses that, so he's going to get more obstinate.
You know what's interesting? The Republicans are going out there saying, okay, let's do this, let's do that, because Obama is already delaying and exempting a whole range of people and different things. He's already doing this. So the Republicans are saying, well, since you're already doing it, let's work together and figure out how we... And Obama says no. He will change the law when he wants to. But if the Republicans propose something, he will not do it. What the Republicans, I think, very cleverly are doing now is getting on the record on all of these things. A one-year delay the individual mandate. What about the medical device tax? They're on the record putting all of those things forward. The Democrats, Harry Reid, President Obama, are saying no to all of those things. So what you might have is a situation where all of this ends up going through. Obamacare goes right on track on January 1. The whole thing is a catastrophe. The American people really start to feel the pain of this. And then the Republicans next year can say, we tried everything on God's green earth, everything within our power to try to stop this and slow it down. And the Democrats said no.
All right, Mike Emanuel at the Capitol right now. Don't go anywhere, Monica. You're getting sort of a gauge of what the next strategy might be on the top, on the part of the House and the Senate. And one option might be to go to things that both sides agree is egregious within the health care law, that is that medical device tax. Do you think in the end, Mike, that might be the acceptable middle ground? The president or Democrats say, all right, we'll delay that one or cancel that one outright, and we both sort of have our loaf here.
Neil, I just talked to a prominent Republican senator who just told me that he thinks we're heading for a 5-day government shutdown because Harry Reid does not want to negotiate on anything dealing with Obamacare. Period. End of story.
Any feature at all, even the provision that exempts Congress.
Nothing. And what has been striking, Neil, has been the lack of conversations, lack of discussions going on. In previous crises, we've seen Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell talking to Vice President Biden or President Obama talking to House Speaker John Boehner, and the lack of dialogue is stunning. You've got the House Republicans were here over the weekend. They worked until after midnight Saturday night to pass a bill. The Senate didn't show up all weekend. They showed up at 2 o'clock this afternoon, stripped it, and said, take it or leave it. We're going to send you a clean, as they call it, government funding bill just to fund the government for a month and a half or so. And so there is no discussions going on at this point. And that's why everybody up here seems so pessimistic, because there's not a last-minute deal coming from what we can see at this hour.
You know, Mike, each side expects the other to blink, I guess, in these negotiations, and that the other side has more to lose than it does. But it's fair to say that if we get a big market sell-off, or God forbid, if this goes into the whole debt ceiling debate and we get a credit downgrade, then, you know, Katie bar the door, it gets to be quite ugly. And that would fall under this president. I mean, and that, you know, regardless of whether you want to blame someone, it would not look good to have a market tumult and then a credit downgrade. And be the first president to experience it, technically in this president's case, for the second time. Does that come into this debate about the next battle, that whole debt ceiling battle?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of concern about that debt ceiling battle because it's going to come up so quickly, October 17th or so. So if we have a government shutdown for a few days and that becomes the sole focus in Washington, the question is what the next play is in terms of the debt ceiling. Does one side feel softened up at that point to be a little bit more flexible on the debt ceiling, or do both sides dig their heels in on that as well? And then the question is, obviously, for this show and for many Americans, what the economic impact would be at that point. And so a lot of questions at this point, but it really is striking the fact that there are not discussions going on at this point. Senator Harry Reid seems to feel like whatever, the House is offering, if they go anywhere near the president's health care law, it is no deal whatsoever. And as you mentioned, there seems to be some low-hanging fruit, but every suggestion that the House sends over, we talked to Reid's aides, and they say dead on arrival, including this latest one about the individual mandate, bottom line, and also about the exemptions for parts of Washington. They don't want any part of it, and so they feel like they have the strength. They feel like they're going to try to teach Republicans a lesson with this. We'll see what the impact is, assuming that continues to be the thinking going forward into this evening.
Amazing. Michael, thank you very much. If you can just stick around there and just to let you know
Sure.
what's happening. The president's running behind schedule here. He was supposed to address the nation, just a report is more to the point, for a brief statement where he stands in this whole negotiating process. But Mike alluded to another development that could be actually much more complicated than this one, and that is the debt ceiling issue. That is when we sort of run out of our credit line here, and that happens on or around October 17th. When they either raise that limit or we face the possibility of not being able to pay our bills. Now, that gets to be an issue of solvency, but you only go insolvent or you default technically if you cannot make good on an interest payment to bondholders. That you lose the full faith and credit of investors in this country if and when that happened. Of course, it has never happened. But some extend that issue of a default, Monica Crowley, to not making good on a Social Security check or a Medicare check. But the technical definition is more having to do with not paying bondholders. But they would never do that.
They would never do, and it's never happened because we have enough revenue coming in through tax receipts every single month to cover debt servicing.
And you would make that a priority
default
anyway, right? Because you wouldn't. Could
Yeah.
you ever envision a case where the Obama administration would do that, to Michael's point, teach Republicans a lesson? Because you wouldn't want that scarlet letter on your watch, would you?
No, and look, we've already had one humiliating credit downgrade on this president's watch. Look, I don't put anything past this administration, given what we've seen over the last 5 years. But what he is really banking on in this game of chicken, he refuses to negotiate or compromise on anything. He is banking on a very corrupt media in this country, covering for him and blaming the Republicans. You asked me what I expect to hear from him in moments. I expect to hear from him more, I will not negotiate, and more blame on the Republicans. He's teeing up his lackeys in the media to go and do his work, to blame the Republicans for this, when the Republicans have been out there day after day, even in the middle of the night, proposing compromises, proposing negotiations. They were elected to represent their folks, too, who hate Obamacare, who want to see government spending cut. They have a responsibility to those folks as well.
And by
So
the way,
this is
both
not all
sides
about
have
Obama.
played, if you want to call this a game of a brinkmanship, both sides have played it. We remember well the 95-96 government shutdown, but there were 17 others post the 1970s, some lasting for days, others just a day. Some fought on issues that mattered, others, emotional issues of the day, abortion funding, military funding for nuclear-powered chips.
Yeah,
in other words, there is precedent for this, so there's enough chicanery.
And they have shut down the government. Democrats under Tip O'Neill shut down the government 12 times over things much less consequential than socialized medicine that would change the very character
But a lot of
this
people,
country.
their real point of memory on this is the 95-96 issue. And to that point, Mike Emanuel, as we wait for the president, he's running very, very late here, they're not remembering that in the larger scheme of things. Government shutdowns, though they be scary, they are hardly the end of the world. I guess their concern is that in 2014, it could be the end of their majority in the House, right?
Well, that's absolutely correct, Neil. The veterans, the people who have been up here for a long time remember that, and they realize that the Republicans were blamed for that, right or wrong, but that's the takeaway, if you will, from that crisis. And so there are a number of Republicans up here who think ultimately their allies will cave after there is a government shutdown for a few days, because the country that may be dipping in and out of coverage may ultimately hold the Republicans accountable. We'll see if that's the case. I'm not predicting that, but all eyes are on what the president will say here, whether he will pour gasoline on the situation or whether he will say time is running out and we've got to do something, and maybe he'll come up with some kind of counteroffer. But we'll see. I mean, again, folks I've been talking to here all day seem pretty pessimistic because there does not seem to be active negotiation underway at this critical hour.
And by the way, you alluded to the next critical battle, that is the debt ceiling battle, which matters a lot more to folks than this little brinksmanship game here, because that one risks the credit rating of the United States, which only one firm downgraded a couple of years ago, but others could follow if it looks like a circus, right?
No question about that, Neil. And so from talking to allies of Senator Harry Reid, he's thinking that, you know, if he gives on Obamacare on this short-term funding bill for a month and a half, that when it gets to the debt ceiling, that the Republicans are going to ask for even more. And so he doesn't want to play into that game. And so he's using playground terms, saying essentially that he thinks Republicans are bullies. And so it's time to punch the bully in the nose. Neil.
Monica, then would the bullies be humbled if you buy that argument?
Look, they're not bullies. Number one, they're actually trying to save the country from total fiscal disaster. Look, again, I get back to the corrupt media. You brought up the earlier shutdown, 95 and 96, and actually the Republicans didn't sustain that much political damage.
No, they didn't.
In 96
in the scheme of things, they really didn't.
And they kept the House of Representatives for many more terms
Senate
after that. Right. So
you never know.
I don't think it's as devastating as people are painting it out to be.
All right. We are going to be here with the president. My colleagues and friends on the 5 are going to take you through that. But